Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Spincast. Today we have Alvaro with us. He works for Upsurge. They are a tournament and league provider and conductor in the League of Legends and Rainbow Six Siege game scenes. So, without further ado, go ahead, introduce yourself, Alvaro. Tell us a little bit from your childhood. What sparked your interest in gaming and esports, and how did that kind of take your path and career up all the way to where you are now?
Yeah, for sure. Hi. Again, I'm Alvaro. I guess I've always kind of played games as a kid. Like the first game that I ever really remember playing was Kingdom Hearts, and I love that game. And so as you know, I was growing up, just games always had a huge impact. And then when I started trying to figure out what I wanted to study in college, I decided to go into game design, and that just kind of led me into the more competitive scene of video games, and just started kind of really getting into that scene. Started coaching a little bit for League of Legends, and then eventually found my way over to Upsurge.
Awesome. Yeah. Um, that's kind of the more traditional route of development. That's what I did myself, is kind of playing competitively and then discovering everything with esports, right? Because it kind of hit me, like, I don't know if it hit you, but it kind of hit me like a brick. Like, I started playing and it was really just playing, gaming, having fun. So then I was like, hey, I'm pretty good at Siege. I'll get a team together and play in some of these tournaments. And then I was pretty good, and one of my friends is actually really good. And he's on his way. But it kind of hit me in the face when I saw the world of esports. And I'm like, oh my God, look at all these opportunities from a professional standpoint outside of just the player role. So you yourself, you're in one of them. So kind of talk us through how you discovered all the opportunities in esports and how that kind of took you into, a league manager type role.
Yeah, so like I said earlier, started off by coaching, and that kind of introduced me to a bunch of different leagues and things like that. And as soon as I saw an opportunity to kind of start working with other people, I just kind of took advantage of that, and um, just kind of progressed from there. It was there's just so many like different, I guess, things to kind of do.
Yeah.
That I was always just busy doing stuff until I kind of landed in a place that I really like doing stuff. And it was just managing leagues, kind of working with both players and teams, and just helping everyone kind of develop.
Exactly. Yeah. Just being one of those main players in, not in the traditional sense of player, but a player in the role of expanding the scene, because that's all what we want to do is expand the scene and provide more opportunities for more competitive play, because there's definitely not enough at that amateur level. So I know that's what you guys are trying to do over there. So talk me through kind of how you guys go about designing your leagues. Why did you pick League of Legends? Why did you pick Rainbow Six Siege? What do those games offer versus others? And what are you looking towards expanding?
Yeah, so League of Legends, I can touch a little bit on. It was the person who created Upsurge, Garrett Meyerson, used to play at a pretty competitive level, and there was just no place to really play. So he started just kind of hosting in-houses, and the in-houses eventually developed into a league. And so that's how League of Legends kind of got started. It was just super like casual, just a bunch of people at like one of the higher levels of League of Legends. I think they were all like Diamond 1 at the time, which 2016. I don't really know what the whole like rank distribution was, but I'd imagine it was pretty good. Yeah, like it's such a small community that people just wanted a place to play, and so that's what he started doing. And once I was kind of brought on, we kept kind of expanding into it, and it got to a certain point where like, well, we kind of like what we're doing with League of Legends. We love what we gave the community. Like, where else can we expand it to? And so we kind of did some looking around and asked a bunch of the amateur teams, like what other games are they looking to kind of get into? And we just happened across Rainbow Six. Awesome. And so from there, it was just like, well, let's get something going for these guys, because at the end of the day, that's kind of who, like, that's what we try to do. We just want to give a bunch of players just a place to kind of play and kind of develop and grow.
Yeah, I think that's definitely something that's lacking in esports. Really is a place to, hone your competitive skills. Because usually most of the games inherent like rank systems are just there's always a flaw or always it's not the game isn't played to its full potential, so to say. And I know that from playing Siege. Rank
Yeah.
Siege isn't always the most competitive thing. It's kind of who kills who first after, 6 runouts and all these, crazy headshots. And then all of a sudden the round's
Yeah.
over. While in competitive,
Yep.
it's, you actually use things called gadgets and utility.
Right. Who'd
Yeah,
imagine that you have all of
exactly.
these tools to
Yeah.
actually win a game, and instead people just run around?
Yeah, exactly. You're telling me I can like, make rotation holes and use things called hard breach like thermite charges and
Yeah.
there's a bunch of other really cool intricate devices. What? I don't just use my gun. This isn't Call of Duty. What? um,
Right.
but
Absolutely
yeah,
wild.
yeah, I think that's definitely, that's just kind of how the community took it, and I think it's really beautiful for the esports community of just, having people like yourself, um, just develop leagues, just literally with the intention of letting people have a place to play in a more competitive sense, more towards how the game is designed to be played. Um, so going through that, talking about the support structure for these leagues. So where do you guys look at what's more important in designing a league that really does enhance that competitive attitude and play style of the teams that participate in your leagues and tournaments?
Well, for us, the most important thing is kind of building out a pipeline for like players to actually progress to get into the professional scene. With like Rainbow Six, they have a really clear pipeline to kind of you are this skill level. How do you get to be a pro player with their like challenger league and their pro league,
Mm-hmm.
and all of that good stuff? Like it's a very clear cut way, and so we just kind of offer like when we look at a game, to see if it's like kind of viable for a league. The thing that we really look for is this a place like kind of a training ground for teams to get high level competition to then make it to the next stage, in any type of qualifiers or, eventually like to get to a pro scene. And the thing I love about Rainbow Six is that it's so clear cut. Like they have a clear set of qualifiers. They've got, like their invitationals and all of that good stuff. And it is fantastic.
Yeah, yeah, I think there is definitely a pipeline there. Um, for Rainbow Six Siege, I know one of my buddies is actually one other person I say plugged in is actively pursuing that pipeline. And it does get, I think personally, gets a little overloaded, but it does have a clear cut. Like you do so good, qualify for CL, do so good in CL. When your, promotion matches get into Pro League, and it
Yep.
is exciting how Ubisoft is expanding Pro League, especially in that LAN sense. I
Oh
know
yeah.
you have a little bit experience with LAN and working with a different company. How do you look at the difference between LAN and online events and leagues? What kind of differences there are in your opinion, and what do you look at in designing these leagues from those two different perspectives?
So for me, I feel like leagues are just such a good way, or leagues are really meant to be online.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's so expensive to travel for a lot of these teams who aren't
Mm-hmm.
really like they just don't have the means necessarily. A lot of the people who play in our leagues are college students, and asking them to buy like a $200 plane ticket to come compete in these competitions and stuff sometimes just isn't kind of in their budget.
Yeah.
Um, and so for like finals and stuff like that, or if you can target like tier one organizations like your Cloud Nines, your 100 Thieves, those type of people, it's totally within their ballpark. And so it's just like it's kind of a no brainer for me to keep everything kind of online. It's just so much more accessible, and that's like again, what we want to do is just kind of give everyone the opportunity to kind of play.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't really do that with if you have to go live unless you do like something like a inner city league or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But there's just a bunch of other hurdles to kind of jump through for
Exactly.
for those type of things. So,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah. I
like
think there's
whenever
a.
we design these, oh, I'm sorry, go
No,
ahead.
no, you're good. You're good. Finish with that. Finish with that.
Yeah, so like I guess like whenever we design these things, it's like we never really have the live component in mind
Mm-hmm.
unless it's for a specific tournament. Like if
Okay.
we want to, like have a league where the top four will go out to a live event, like that's awesome. Everyone at the end of the day wants to go compete on stage, and
Mm-hmm.
you can't really do that online. Like we try to get them as close as possible by streaming as many matches as we
Mm-hmm.
can, but nothing will ever be kind of going on stage and like competing at your fullest for, a nice chunk of change.
Exactly. I think that LAN experience was what everybody wants in the esports scene because it is
Yeah.
so unique. It's not just playing on a stage, which is also incredible, but it's also the arena and the fans and your loved ones, your family, your friends watching you, supporting you live in person. It's just totally different. That camaraderie and that atmosphere within the community that's built up in LAN events is something truly incredible. And I know we've all experienced it, going to LAN events at the professional level when that crowd gets going and the big plays have to happen, like you can feel the stadium or arena start to like rumble, and then everyone goes crazy. It's something that's truly, truly incredible. And personally, I think, especially with the way those arenas are designed, it gets really, really loud, which is louder than like outdoor like football games. That's more to the design of it, but it's so much more hype. So kind of going off that, what do you hope for that's kind of like maybe seeing more of these arenas built or maybe funding from cities or so to say? What do you hope to see that helps you encapsulate and move towards those land final type events?
I mean, the more common they are, the easier it'll be for us to kind of work out, something to where we can send these players to play live
Hmm.
for like the top tier competition. A lot of these guys that are in our higher level leagues, like they're either at the top of the competition in the amateur scene or
Hmm.
the top of the competition in the collegiate scene.
Hmm.
And so, like, you know, as more and more stadiums get built, it's so much easier for us to be like, look, these two teams are like, there's one, let's say in like Texas and one in Oklahoma. Like, let's
Hmm.
take them down to like Dallas, which is kind of like
Hmm.
halfway through, and
Hmm.
let's get them on stage and play so they can play live.
Yeah.
So that's kind of like my hope as it becomes more and more mainstream and the facilities are there. Like we can shift from online finals to live finals and really give these players like the opportunity that they deserve.
Yeah, and I think that also helps us expand the esports scene to outside of the community. Because I think when you're in the esports community, it's really, really tight knit. Everyone wants to help each other. We also want to help outside the community. It's just harder to get those people to buy into it, so to say. It is very hard to sit down and watch a League of Legends or a Rainbow Six Siege game if you don't know what's going on. You're gonna get bored fast because those games are just so hard to really grasp what's going on unless you have someone kind of leading you all the way through it.
Mm-hmm.
And at a LAN event, I think you can get a little bit more of that, asking your neighbor, asking the person sitting next to you, or going with friends and family to help you through that. So yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. So you touched on it a little bit. You used to be a coach in college. What do you hope, not what do you hope, but maybe in the future, but from that collegiate sense, I think a lot of players play collegiately and at that amateur level. So do you think that's going to start to grow apart or stay meshed together in the esports world?
I think it'll be always kind of meshed together until, unless like every single state starts picking up a League of Legends team or like a
Hmm.
Rainbow team.
Hmm.
Once there are more professional organizations, I think there'll be more of a divide.
Hmm.
But like these players who are in college, only the top teams are really going to be able to have a chance to go play professional or like the
Hmm.
top players. And
Hmm.
so, what do you do once you're done? Once you graduate and you can't play collegiate, you're just going to
Hmm.
go over to the amateur team. And because a lot of the players, like, they're not playing because they want to be the best, they play because they love the game. And that love
Exactly.
of the game isn't going to end once you graduate college. Like,
Hmm.
once you get like once you graduate and get a job and you're working 9 to 5, like 6 o'clock hits and you're like, you know what, I'm going to queue up for some league.
Yeah.
And so they're used to playing on a team and they're going to go out and find other teams to play on.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point in there, and that at that amateur level, you see it in a lot of different traditional sports, right? Like you have soccer leagues and golf leagues and flag football and those, softball, where, it's really just people that want to play the game. And you don't really see that in esports in a structured sense. You see it here and there, like, with what you guys do in Upsurge, but it's not mainstream by any means. There's no readily available structure that is mainstream and is widely accepted as like, hey, this is the place to go play amateur. These guys, they're really good, but they don't really have that, time or ability to pursue the professional level. But they just want to play good competitive game X or Y. So looking forward, do you hope to see that structure kind of come into fruition? Like, how do you think is the best way to approach getting those kind of mainstream structures where you have a lot of people that just want to play the game competitively at that amateur level?
I mean, it just kind of depends on like I guess who you're kind of targeting. Like
Mm-hmm.
with us, since we try to like get the top percent and get them ready for pro, it might take a little bit longer for us to like dip down into like the gold or the silver ranges where
Mm-hmm.
the majority of players are.
Mm-hmm.
And so like I would love to see like at one point where we just offer leagues for everyone. Like you're a bronze player, you can come and just play and like for a couple of weeks and then have like a playoff.
Yeah,
And potentially just like be the winner of like your group.
exactly.
um but it's just kind of like so I would like to see it get to that point. Are we kind of there yet? Not so much. It's really hard to um get those type of things going in my opinion, just because in let's say you have a group of 5 friends, like those 5 friends, and you want to play specifically with those 5 people, right?
Mm-hmm.
What happens when one of them is challenger and all the rest are bronze?
Yeah,
Like there's just a lot of like that. You can't put like one challenger and 4 bronze against a team of like all golds are just going to get smacked for the most
exactly.
part.
Yeah.
And so like there's a bunch of things that I don't think that people are really ready for in terms of like, you know, you're all a certain skill level. You have to go find someone else of your skill level.
Mm-hmm.
But like with the introduction of things like what Riot did with Clash,
Yeah.
I think it's like we're getting closer and closer.
Mm-hmm.
Because they're making a platform for people to get used to playing 5-man League of Legends, which it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't really exist anymore except for a single queue like Flex. But
Mm-hmm.
Flex, like among the community, is just kind of a joke.
Yeah.
Like it's more of like a meme queue. You're gonna go
Yeah.
up with your friends like on a Friday night, and you're just gonna do something troll.
Yeah.
Uh,
Exactly.
and so like as time kind of progresses and as people like as esports become more and more mainstream, um, the lower level, I guess like platform will just once the demand is there, someone is going to be there to just pick it up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I personally hope to see that growth sooner than later. Just because I think, like we were touching on earlier, it's very hard to play a game the way it's designed to be played on an online server. In like a ranked, like a public queue. It's
Yeah.
very difficult to achieve that because typically the other players you're queuing against randomly don't have the same mindset. And they're going to do
Yeah.
whatever they want, and it kind of takes some of the fun out of it because you have to just play so different than how you want to play. Um,
Mhm.
Now, obviously, that goes to a certain level. You still have to play the game somewhat akin to how it's designed. Um, but going along those thoughts, expanding that structure out to encompass the entire population, especially at that mid range, where typically it's gold in most games, where that's 50 to 60% of the player base is in that level, and is giving them a platform to play consistently at that same competitive level, and then obviously an added bonus of a prize pool, um, more than just an arbitrary elo system, which is great. You can brag about being diamond or platinum or champion, whatever that top tier is, but I think money speaks a little bit.
Yeah,
Um,
man, definitely. It's a
exactly.
nice little added bonus to
Hmm.
like just to winning. Like, yeah, oh,
Yeah.
I beat this team. I'm the best in this community. But
Yeah.
then you get like you get a couple $100 on top of it, and you're like,
Yeah.
okay, sweet, this is
On.
awesome. I just played games and I made some
Hmm.
cash.
Yeah, and on top of that, also like winning a championship always feels good. Like winning a trophy or a title, more than just hitting that max cap of rank. Like actually winning a title against a field of opponents on the similar level. Just it has that feeling to it that everyone kind of wants in that competitive sense. So seeing the scene expand to that would be something that's incredible. So I got time for one more question. So looking towards the future, we touched on it a little bit. What do you really hope to see to get to that structure from that, online league series where I can log on with my friends, we're all just kind of 5 guys just chilling and want to play somewhat competitive? What kind of stepping stones do you see the esports community taking to get there in the next, say, 3 or 4 years?
I think that it's just like making it more normalized.
Mm-hmm.
And also just kind of like I guess people also have to kind of be a little bit accepting that I guess people are going to be at different ranks.
Mm-hmm.
I think the most important thing to make something like that viable in the next couple of years is just like giving players a platform to find other players.
Mm-hmm.
When you're when you're just with your friends and your 5 friends and someone's significantly better than you, something like that'll just never really kind of work unless it's a for fun league, because no one wants to be like, okay, well, I'm going to drop like $20 to play against someone who's just automatically going to,
Yeah.
And so giving players platforms to kind of find other players of their skill level is going to be huge. And there are some things kind of like that. They're just kind of either underutilized or not really known. So I think that's definitely one step behind it. And I think another thing is kind of working with game developers directly to kind of set up an ecosystem where it is the norm for their game. Like, let's say again, with Clash, it's a great idea. The only problem with it is that right now it's only like once a month. And people, might want to play more. They might want a different format. And unless you can give players, I guess, kind of what they want, it's just never going to come into fruition.
Yeah. 100%. I think there's a lot of really good stepping stones in there in regards to growing that structure. I think that was a fantastic response, and hopefully we can see some of those take place sooner rather than later, and letting players find each other. Because I think what I use in the previous, I see a lot of my friends use is just Discord, right? You go into any kind of random Discord and say, hey, I'm looking for a team, or hey, I'm looking for, 1 or 2 players for my team, and then finding a team that way is going to take a long time. And, most of my friends just kind of rotate in and out of teams in that sense. So, hopefully coming up with more structure, more, a steady approach.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's all the time we have for everybody. Thank you for listening. Alvaro, thank you for taking the time to come on, share some great insight on the future of online leagues and those structures that we hope to see that will help grow our scene with just the entire esports world. So lastly, tell us where we can find you, where we can find Upsurge, if we want to find out some more.
Yeah, we've got Twitter where you can find us at. It's Upsurge GG.
Okay.
We've got a Twitch channel as well. We stream basically every night of the week. It is twitch.tv/Upsurge Esports. And then through all of those different channels, you can find our Discord where most of our community just kind of hangs out, and you can get other type of notifications for, when our leagues are starting or when games are going on and being streamed. So.
Awesome. Sounds good. Everyone go give them a check out, especially if, like we said, talking about the entire podcast, if you want to find a good place to play, on your level in that competitive sense. So once again, thank you, Alvaro. To all our listeners, stay healthy and stay happy in these very difficult times. Make sure you're taking care of yourself and your loved ones, and ultimately stay plugged in to everything esports related.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, man. I appreciate it.